So over the centuries, marbling has been used to decorate generally columns or walls in buildings, but it can also be used in fine art as a faux finish, which is what it is. So here we're just laying down the background that we're going to work over once it's dry. You want it to be basically an eggshell finish, so using the Matisse background colours give you the perfect finish here. I think there's anything else to say. That'll do. Okay, so now that the background has dried and we put down the background white, giving a nice flat surface to work on, we're going to use the marbling gel. We're going to mix some white with it, and you can use the structure white, the flow white, you could even use the background white if you wanted to. And we're going to mix, or let the marbling gel mix on the sponge, the white and the marbling gel. So you don't want it to be completely white, we're just letting it randomly mix. Now we're just going to apply the white onto the white background, and I can hear you say, hang on, I can't see the difference. Well, when we go to add the next step is when you'll actually notice the difference here. So we've just randomly put the white in with the marbling gel. Now I'm just going to lay a little bit more marbling gel out, and we're going to put in veins using Payne's grey and black. So once again we just have a little bit of the colour out. Hopefully if there's any left in the tube, we've got a bit of black there. And using a liner brush, we're going to come in, wet the liner brush in the gel a little bit, and just pick up the tiniest amount of black and start running some veins in. Now, this is while the background is still white. This is still wet, at least, of the white and the marbling gel. I'll just pick up a tiny bit of Payne's grey into the black there, just to give us some differentiation. Now, it's not looking too much like marble at the moment, and that's fine because we come back in and really blend it into that background. So I'll start doing that now so that this doesn't dry on us. So once again, taking a very nice soft bristled brush, and we're just going to work this into the background. You can either stipple or just pick a little bit of that black up, mix it in with the background using very light strokes and making sure that the brush always stays dry. So you're going to need maybe some paper on hand, or you can use your apron. And just while this is drying, we're going to move the paint around. In some areas you might like to leave just the way they are. In some areas you might actually mix quite a bit of the black in with the background. So now my brush is getting a little bit wet. It's handy to actually have a couple of brushes on hand because it takes a little while for them to dry if you go ahead and clean them. So under the lights here, it's starting to dry off a little quickly, and that's fine because we can actually just come back in. If there's an area you don't like, or I think it's gone a bit heavy, we can actually come back in over the top with the sponge and just start to wet it and blend it back in again. But remember, you've got to keep your brush dry. And I'm just going to keep working on this before we get to the next step. Once again, I don't. So now the third and final step for the paint is to go over with a glaze with Australian sienna. Now you could continue to work and just use the blacks and Payne's grey and white, although I like to add the Australian sienna, making a glaze with it and just doing certain areas. And we're just going to do a similar thing as we did with the white, which is to just do a couple of areas over the top, and that's why I've left these areas untouched here, because once we come over with the Australian sienna, we want something to be, we want it to be a little bit more intense underneath. So once again, I'm going to take the surface, the faux finish gel, and the Australian sienna just a smidge, and hopefully find a clean part of my sponge. And once again, we're mixing it in with the gel. We don't want the colour to be too intense. There we go. And we're just going to put a little bit more gel there, and just give a slight hint of this rich golden colour. And you want to vary it around. You can see the variation much more with this colour than you can with the black or the white. You can see there's that real deep, rich sienna colour going all the way to a gold. So I'm just going to do down here for the moment, and once again we soften it like we did before, and you're just going to, as it dries, just blend it in here and there. The one thing also, when you're softening, you want the overall pattern to be heading in the same direction. So our veins are heading up and down in this direction. You want your softening or your blending strokes. You don't really want to see any brush strokes, but you want these to be just in the same direction. I'm going to blend that in there so it's a little bit softer, not quite as obvious that we've used the sponge. You might just stipple it as well to take out some of those highlights. We're looking for a fairly random pattern. Now what you could do is have left this to dry, put a coat of varnish over the top, and then put this over. That's this as a glaze. That's another possibility, but depends how much spare time you've got on your hands. And you just play with this a little bit. It's interesting. You have a look at the way marble forms, and if you can see some samples of marble photos or the real thing, that's probably the best. You're trying to copy something that's from nature, so you're going to get it right. Somewhere in the world there's going to be something that looks like your piece of marble somewhere, so you can't get it wrong. Now, every piece of marble we see is normally polished and has a high sheen to it. So you'd add a varnish once again over the top of this. I'm going to go ahead and do a little bit more work on it. And then we'll come back and varnish it, and I'll show you the finished piece. So once you've satisfied you're finished, we just need to wait for this to dry, and then we apply a few coats of varnish to give it that high sheen.